back. It's time to spend an hour with Dr. Eric Karlstrom, and we've had Dr. Karlstrom on a number of times in the past. He is absolutely fascinating. The idea of targeted individuals, of at distance influencing the human mind and really making life, for some people, just horrible. We know now that voice-to-skull technology has been patented for, 30 years or more? They call it V2K. But it is now possible, at distance, to embed in the human mind memories of events that never happened. Visual images of events, like photographs, so to speak, of things that you've never seen. So we're into a digital world now where photographs of objects can be created, as you know. That's trouble. So what's real and what isn't? Who draws the line? Who makes the determination? It's really ultimately in the eye of the beholder and that person's confidence in the source. It's a very difficult time and getting to be more so all the time. So Eric, welcome back. How are you?
Jeff, it's great to talk to you. I'm doing fine. All things being relative. It's good to touch base again. Yeah, I just wanted to throw in real quick that I spent 30 years teaching at 3 universities in my field was physical geography, physical and environmental geography, and I did the standard professor thing. And then when I retired in 2011, I found that I had time on my hands and energy left, and so I started pursuing questions that I thought were very important for all of us. And so I maintain 5 websites now, which are, in effect, huge digital libraries of information, because I feel that a democracy requires an informed public. Otherwise, if we're just getting disinformation, we're very, very easy to mislead and misdirect and manipulate.
Oh, it's shooting fish in a barrel. It's ridiculous.
So anyway, my websites are naturalclimatechange.org, which fits right into my kind of academic specialty of physical geography, soils, climate, landforms, etc. 911nwo.com, which of course has to do with the 9/11 false flag and its import to the New World Order, NWO. Also, as I have a house in southern Colorado sitting right next to one of the largest freshwater aquifers in North America, I got interested in water issues there, and that's reflected in my San Luis Valley Waterwatch.com website. And then
a lot of people live a lot of people live in the San Luis Valley. I mean, people of note. I've got a friend there. I can mention him. Jay Widener lives in the valley. So there are a lot of people up there. It's a fascinating area.
Really strong, and the UN had a real stronghold in my town, Crestone, Colorado.
Yeah.
And it was investigating that topic. I've got a very long series of articles on my 911nwo.com website entitled, "Is Crestone Baca the Vatican City of the New World Order? An Expose of the New World Religion." And I started writing this because, of course, I lived there for a while, and I noticed that things were not often as they were presented to be. And I realized that Marie Strong, who more or less founded it, was the, savior of the planet for the United Nations, supposedly, Captain Planet, and was a close associate of the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and who supposedly authored Agenda 21 for the UN. So
Thank you, Maurice.
Something was going on there, and it was in the context of all of that research, which I started as soon as I retired in 2011, that I got into mind control and cults, and that during that period I realized I was a targeted individual. I like the term now, targeted citizen. So it could be in reprisal for my curiosity and in my public activism there. But anyway, so the next website that I felt compelled to start was gang-stalking mind-controlled cults.com. And then finally, my music site, which I've always loved to play music, guitar, banjo, and piano, is erickarlstrom.com. So I maintain 5 websites. I'm very active in my retirement, and now I'm kind of dodging all the street theater skits and the stalking of a targeted citizen.
The street theater skits. No, it's not. And it doesn't really matter where you go. They're going to follow you if they want to. That's the sad part.
It's a global system. I've got a name for it now. I keep changing. Keep looking for acronyms that will sum it up. Sometimes I call it the Global Gestapo for short. And now my term is, my acronym is Gestapo 666, short for Global Intelligence Syndicate, Secret, Satanic, Space-Based Surveillance, Stalking, Tracking, Targeting, Torture, Terrorism, Termination, Transhumanism, and Psycho-Political Policing for Profit, Psychotronic, and Psychological Warfare Operations. 666 because I have 6 S's, 6 T's, and 6 P's in there. But Gestapo 666 for short, or just the Global Gestapo. Yeah, it's very much a global program. If you get put on one of these blacklists or red lists or terrorism watch lists, you become an enemy of the state, and the state can use all its resources, plus all these citizen vigilante groups and private security firms, and it's an enormous thing called the National Security Enterprise, which is targeting quote unquote enemies of the state, or dissidents, or terrorists, or the critics of government policy, or whatever.
There you go. You just put your finger on probably the biggest aspect that is of concern, or should be of concern to everyone: critics of the state. And my God, the state is endless in its opportunities to criticize it. I've never seen anything uglier, more ineffective, and more less representative of a republic, a form of government. They call it a democracy, but we're really a republic. What's going on in this country is so bad and so ugly, and I understand why the millennials are, for the most part, checking out and becoming screen addicts. I mean, it makes sense to me. It's not their choice as much as they're being led right into it, set up, and ensnared. They're done. I mean, how are you going to buck the system like this when it is so digitally brilliant and cunning and nefarious? I mean, it really is all of the above and much, much more than that. These kids really don't have much of a chance. I'm talking about anybody born from the mid-'80s onward right now. And the next generation coming up behind that is called Gen Z, as in the last letter of the alphabet. So you figure it out. Anyway, it's a bad scene, and it's being backed up constantly by these digital electronic weapons, directed energy weapons, whatever you want to call them. And there are new ones coming along all the time. They get to be more sophisticated. They've got super mega computers now to back and use and implement these protocols. And what they really are is they're torture items. People are tortured with this stuff. And I don't mean necessarily violently, horribly. It doesn't matter. It can be minimal in the background, but you're still being tortured. Anyway, I'm talking too much. Go ahead, please.
Well, Jeff, everything you're saying is true. And what you said earlier about, all of us being introduced or inducted into a virtual world, a digital world, and it being very, very difficult for young people to distinguish between what is real and what is virtual. Now, you and I are a little older. I grew up, before chemtrails, I was a rock climber and a mountain climber, and I spent, some really good years exploring the American West and traveling around. And
good for
I know
you.
What blue skies look like. And,
and
I know what nature, and I still use nature as a solace a lot, because that's, for me, I get back to reality with nature. But these youngsters who are on their digital devices all the time, oh my gosh, they just hardly look up, and it is so it's so sad to see that they have been kind of sucked in like a big vacuum cleaner into this digital world. They have very little clue about the real world.
No, and those digital devices are thieves. They steal their lives. They're stealing their consciousness. They are no longer able, as you very adroitly pointed out, to discern between reality and the digital reality that they're given. They are hooked, line, and sinker, gone, many of them. Just gone.
Yeah.
Sorry to say it. I hope it doesn't sound too negative for some of you, but it's the damn truth.
Well, we have some big problems, and I guess we just have to call them like we see them. We can't just what was it? Patrick Henry said, for my part, I'll take the bad news, rather than a fluffy lie.
Right. Sure.
He said it much more eloquently than that. But we need the spirit of Patrick Henry, one of our founding fathers. The refusal to go into this digital slavery, which is of course what's happening. But it's more than just digital. I mean, they've got the full weight of the military and intelligence services behind this global Gestapo, as I call it, and our leaders, our military and political leaders, since World War II, have been secretly plotting, and it's in the documents and books, to basically dissolve the United States into a one world government, and of course America has been used as the police force, and we've invaded so many countries and killed so many people towards this end, and yet Americans don't seem to the best defense they seem to have is kind of the ostrich defense, which is really synonymous with looking at their devices. I mean, they just simply choose not to know, because the information's out there. I mean, people like me and you, I mean, we're just bringing it up all the time. But, whether or not somebody actually pays attention to that really is up to them. So I don't know what to do about those people who employ the ostrich defense.
Well, the good news is you're speaking to what I honestly and humbly feel is the most brilliant, wise, caring, intelligent audience in talk radio, period. Best ever.
Great. I really appreciate that. That's good. I believe it too. Let me throw out three hypotheses, Jeff.
Yeah.
And you tell me which one you want to go down, because this is kind of where I'm at in terms of my gang stalking mind control cults.com website, which now has almost 850 posts on it, many of which I've written and many of which I've taken from.
Click on Eric's name in guess, and you'll go right to it.
Yeah, and the first hypothesis I think is pretty easy to prove. Is the Department of Homeland Security modeled on the CIA's Phoenix program in the Vietnam War, as Douglas Valentine asserts in his book, The CIA as Organized Crime, How Covert Operations Corrupt America and the World. And he makes a very compelling case that, yes, Homeland Security is modeled on the Phoenix program. It is the interagency, all elements of the society brought together in a quote-unquote pacification program to make sure that everyone's on board with the kind of military occupation of the country, that everybody's ideologically assimilated, which is to say, if somebody has a potential for resisting the powers that be, they are tortured and terrorized and often killed, as they were in Vietnam. 25 to 40,000 civilians were killed under the Phoenix program. And this basic template now has been applied to the Department of Homeland Security. So that's my number one hypothesis. Pretty easy to prove that. Second one is a new one I've just come up with. Is Gestapo 666, or the global Gestapo, the covert reality under the cover story of Jade Helm 15 and UX-16, which of course are these huge military exercises in the southwestern United States in 2015 and 2016 involving unconventional warfare, which did dissident extraction exercises, could it be that was a massive psyop to quote unquote to intimidate the public with a massive show of force as a drill, and to draw out and locate the quote unquote dissidents, and then they could be isolated and removed.
No, they baited a lot of them, and they added a lot of names to their database, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. The terrorism watch list probably grew to many millions. You know? So that's my second hypothesis. And then my third hypothesis is equally draconian, I'm afraid, maybe even more so. And I prefer now the term targeted citizens to targeted individuals, but, same thing. Are targeted citizens a beta test for 5G or fifth generation wireless communication?
Oh, yeah.
which is to be deployed along with artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and cyber warfare, and controlled from, drumroll please, Israel. Although they've made laws in Israel that they will not adopt 5G there themselves.
Isn't that interesting? I hope all of you remember that. That's like Monsanto not serving GMO food in their cafeteria. They would only serve non-GMO food in their cafeteria.
Yeah, 5G refers to, the gigahertz spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're talking very high frequencies in the millimeter range that are weaponized frequencies that can be used for surveillance and for torture and I choose military frequencies. So this then, we all then in our homes can be attacked and surveilled by our appliances and our smart meters, etc. That's my third hypothesis.
Yeah, I choose. Let's go through door number 3.
Okay.
I think it has the most diversity, and it's now. It's happening. Yeah. It's beginning to be rolled out now. This whole millimeter wave thing. You point to Israel. Israel took over production of the Intel chip. You've all seen that little sign, Intel inside, the Intel chip. The Intel chip, as Brandon, Brandon?
Oh, yeah, Brendan O'Connor.
Brendan is brilliant about this. He really was the first person on this program to spill the beans on the Intel chip being redesigned, re-engineered in Israel and produced in Israel to have a big, huge, gaping back door in it. And that second back door, or that second door, gave Israel abject control of virtually everything with an Intel chip in it. So that just keep that in mind. Okay, that's number one. Now, they will not use it in their own devices. Why? Because other people can get into it and do the same damn thing to them. They know what's going on. This is a huge issue. The 5G millimeter wave technology is an enormous problem, and it's not going to go away. Let's call it then an enormous fact of life, because we're going to have to live with this. How well we live with this is really up in the air at this point. When you factor in AI, and I have been a believer for a long time that AI, given its own free reign, and it's going to get it, whether they trick us into it, AI intelligences, or we give it to them, or somebody has a bad hair day and he turns it loose, AI is going to figure out that we are a subsidiary second-rate species compared to AI. That's what AI would think. AI will look at us as carbon-based units, losers, disease-oriented, petty, all of the usual carnal desires, the whole thing. They're going to say, let's push them aside. We're literally life. We don't have to worry about dying. We're eternal. Our entities in the supercomputers, and whether you upload Ray Kurzweil or whatever, you don't die. So they're permanent. We're transient and we're gone. Tell me your thoughts about AI and the potential dangers that I think Elon Musk, I don't like the guy, but he has correctly warned us about it. I forget who else warned us about AI. There were a couple of big names warning us. I think, you remember 2001, all of you, and HAL, the computer, and how they had to go in there and literally pull the circuits on HAL to shut HAL down because HAL had taken over? Well, that was a long time ago. But Arthur C. Clarke wasn't stupid. He could see where it was going. So, Eric, tell me your views on AI. If you have any knowledge as to where we are now on this. We remember the little vignette about Facebook using 2 different AI platforms to work on a problem, and they found out that the 2 AI entities had created their own language to communicate with each other that we didn't understand, and the only way they could stop it was by pulling the plug on the AI units, and they did. That's what we were told anyway. Talk to me about AI.
Well, I began my teaching profession at university in 1981 in Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, and it was discussed by some of my colleagues there in the psychology department. So this has been around for quite a while. I think now they're at the stage where, yes, they've got what they call conscious supercomputers, these computers that can learn. And as you say, then, we run the risk of, kind of going up against Hal. And, from what I've read and heard about the gang stalking program, it could well be that a part of it is at least some of these victims are going to have their minds mapped. And according to Brian Tu, who we both have met, he says actually that, and he quotes Robert Duncan, the goal is to actually capture the soul of the victim as
right.
in the soul is defined as
right.
intellect, emotions, and will.
Right.
And then to make a digital copy of that and then put that back into their supercomputer. And then, of course, this could go into kind of a hive mind, which could be used for the immortality of Ray Kurzweil and his friends, I guess, or whatever. And so, yeah, I think we run the risk of moving into kind of a hive mind situation where technology is the kind of the central organizing principle. All of us are plugged in with our devices, and all of us are, this can go both ways, and we control it to an extent, and it controls us perhaps to a larger
Forbidden
extent.
Planet, 1954, Walter Pidgeon, Forbidden Planet. Remember, or 56, whenever it was. Remember the Krell, the people on the planet, created these enormous, we're talking about dozens of miles, hundreds of miles of long, enormous machines, huge supercomputers. Total.
Yeah, well, it's
everything.
fascinating that you pulled that out. I don't remember that, but I have studied, in the context of this research project about the Macy conferences, which happened right after World War II. And Dr. Norbert Wiener wrote the book on cybernetics, and the Macy conferences were all about the man-machine transhumanism interface. In other words, you're going to get a merger of computers and humans. And they had these, interdisciplinary group of people like Gregory Bateson and Margaret Mead, his wife, and various others who were well connected. Yeah. And this then really became the template for so much of the work that's been done, and very nefarious work, I might say. These
dark.
I think there was an idealism to this, but these people are, in my opinion, monsters.
Agreed. Agreed. Hold on, Eric. We have to pause. Dr. Eric Karlstrom, PhD, is with us. And click on his name, you'll go right to the Gang Stalking, Mind Control, and Cults site, and it is loaded with information. We're going to come back and talk more about AI, which I believe is maybe the transitional tool that takes this planet away from carbon-based units and puts it in the hands of supercomputer. We're going to call it digital consciousness. All right? Back in a minute. Hold on. Okay, and welcome back. Let me ask all of you to make a note of this, at least mentally, if not, please write it down. Let me just put it that way. Go to Dr. Karlstrom's page, where his name is in guests. Gang Stalking, Mind Control, Cults.com. Look on the right-hand side. Wonderful choice. It's a nice menu, topics. Look under Mind Control, for example. Scroll down the papers there, the articles. It's a bonanza of where they are and what they're allowing us to be aware of. It's all, remember, everything is weaponized now. Everything is weaponized, especially mind control and the whole idea of digitally interfacing with people on a basis that they're not even aware of. So you've got this issue of people who are fighting to determine who they even are anymore. They don't know, and they fight and they fight and they say, I'm not like this, and yet they are being changed into something else. One of the most, and I had to laugh, it was black humor, but they're now teaching, Eric, AI common sense. That's their next big trick. AI works because it's got basically a response for any imaginable circumstance. They're trying to teach it reasoning and common sense. Now that sounds Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah. But the problem is, whose common sense is it? And what are the parameters? And what are the boundaries? What the hell is common sense? So this is very concerning to me. But I've just scrolled down and looked at some of the titles of these wonderful papers under mind control. And this is a must resource for people who want to know. Let me say one other thing. It is now entirely within the realm of possibility, if not probability, that many people are being controlled remotely, satellite, vehicle, ground-based antennas, in ways that literally have changed them to the extent that they are no longer what they might have been, and they are essentially obedient to a control grid system network matrix that makes them do anything that they want, especially people who have been fragmented as children through satanic ritual abuse, through various other kinds of horrific mental and emotional breakdown torture. They never it's like Humpty Dumpty. They never put them back together. It's like a disco ball. It looks round. You get up close. It's hundreds of these little mirrors. It's not one nice globe. People now, and it's only going to get worse. People now, Eric, no longer in the minds of these black ops, horrible people, have the birthright to live a normal, happy life that can be developed and lived to its fullest on the terms of the individual citizen. The citizen contactees, the targeted citizens, are really in trouble. Now, that's not to say we're not all being targeted to one degree or another through the mass media, through digital, through 5G. We are. But there are specific people who have been completely overhauled and taken control of from a very young age. I stop at that point.
Yeah, in the context of this extended series that I wrote, Is Crestone Baca the Vatican City of the New World Order? And of course, it's very New Age with all these different religions there, an expose of the New World Religion. I wrote 12 parts, and I think I have 70 appendices. And part 6 was called Mind Control, History and Applications. And I reviewed about 40 or 50 books on this topic, and I had very little understanding of it before that time. But reading those books was really emotionally exhausting because the topic is so extraordinarily evil. We have to understand that the people who run the world are Satanists, and they care nothing about human life.
They're not us. They're not us.
They are the slave masters. Their goal for humanity is to enslave us and genocide us. So we really need to take our heads out of the sand and put down the ostrich defense and take up whatever offense we can. We all have our own different. Those of us who still operating on our own cylinders have our own, kind of God-given abilities, and we have to pull those together and unite to try to preserve our own sovereignty as individuals and the integrity of our creation, the planet.
Right.
Because these are under attack and have been for a long time.
Hey, what I said earlier, you agree with, basically, correct?
Yeah.
And I look at these titles and I say, I wish everyone would read these. You've got to get hold of this before it's too late. Go ahead.
Yeah, anytime you're struggling to learn a new subject, as I was when I started this Mind Control, History and Applications, you try to go to the best sources. And if you're an academic, what you do is a literature review. You find the books, you read the books, and then you summarize them. I mean, that's what you do initially, before you take it the next step. And one of the books that I found most helpful is by the late Dr. Ronnie Kilda, former chief medical officer of Northern Finland, who herself was a targeted individual for nearly 40 years and who was killed in 2015 by these programs.
I remember that.
But she herself wrote a book just posthumously, kind of a collection of her writings called Bright Light on Black Shadows. And it's very poorly edited because, again, it was English is her 6th language, and it was pulled together posthumously. But there is so much important information in there that people need to know if they're being targeted. If you're a target, you're at war for your life. And, if you have the resources, educate yourself by all means. You'll live longer and you'll live better. And who knows, you might win, But it is a war, and you need to know what you're up against. But so Dr. Ronnie Kilda, she came up with this understanding of what's going on in the world. She was a political insider. She's a medical person with medical degrees.
Uh-huh.
She wrote papers about mind control. She understood it. And she says the elite have plans to get rid of 2/3 of the world's population.
Right.
Now, that's, of course, Agenda 21, with electromagnetic warfare, and that's what we're talking about, these frequencies like 5G or gigahertz frequencies that are weaponized gigahertz frequencies, chemical warfare, and psychological warfare. And she's saying the nations are the plaything of the elite, and this is a satanic elite. She's saying mind control is listed as a non-lethal weapon by the military. And
Unreal.
this technology links the brains of people via implanted microchips, now just nanoparticles from the metals that are sprayed, to satellites.
You can drink it, inhale it, doesn't matter. It takes up residence right in your body.
Yeah, you don't have to have a microchip now. You get so much of these
that's Model A Ford stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the equivalent of the microchips then is linked to satellites, which are controlled by ground-based supercomputers. Okay, there's the AI. So she says all military branches are involved in developing this technology, and they've been doing conferences for decades, and medical centers and universities have been involved for decades. Yeah. And so, this is not all secret stuff. You can find out about this. But what it is cybernetics, the attempt to have neurological control and communication over humans. And it's been going on since the 40s without the knowledge of the public. And they're using directed energy weapons, mostly electromagnetic frequencies, Tesla technology. And these act on the psyche of the body and all living creatures. And there are many names, but remote neural monitoring is one, and directed energy weapons, psychophysical weapons, a whole series of names. But active denial system is right in there, the 95 gigahertz range, and that gives you extraordinary pain on the skin. So that's that's one of those weaponized frequencies. So basically, the secret services and the military are carrying out this sabotage and terror. They're the biggest terrorists in the world, and they're committing crimes against humanity. These are felonies. This is unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional to deprive citizens of their constitutional rights. It's treason, in fact, and it's a criminal felony in every state. But they get away with it because it's such a large system, which has been enabled by a whole series of laws like the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012.
Eric, if you could get into court with this issue, you'd lose. You'd lose. The judges are all rigged. We know that. They're not going to allow you to try to prove that EMF mind control is even a real issue. They'll say, it's some science fiction. You won't get anywhere. The courts are gone. They're gone.
That is the reality, and if you listen to the Kay Griggs interview, you understand that reality.
I had Kay on, yeah.
I know, I've got those interviews posted on my website. That's a great interview.
Thank you.
But let me just finish with a couple more points that she makes here. She's saying that more crimes against humanity have been committed under the shield of national security than people can ever know, possibly even more than the mafia. And then the last point I would like to leave you with is, she says mass remote mind control of the population is achieved via the mobile phone network.
Yes.
Okay, there's our 5G and our 4G and our 3G and our 2G, and all those young people on their devices are being subjected to these frequencies and technologies, which can in fact control and will be able to, increasingly control them. This is very dangerous. Not only are they carcinogenic, but they can actually be kind of hived into the global hive mind.
And are the word I have now, Eric, is that each 5G phone will be a full-time repeater. They'll be picking up just generic 5G traffic and re-radiating it, rebroadcasting it. They'll have every 5G phone will be a cell tower, if you will, just to keep it simple. They'll be picking up, they'll be serving you and doing what you want to do with your smartphone, but in the background, they'll be running, it'll be like a cell phone receiver, and broadcaster. Every phone. That's how they're going to saturate everything with these rather short length millimeter waves. They don't have the reach. So they're going to have every phone will be actually, let's just call it a cell tower to keep the image real clean. All right. Every phone will be an active cell tower, absorbing and re-radiating, rebroadcasting generic 5G traffic for the world or whoever you're around.
Yeah, and our neighborhoods will have to have these new cell tower units every 500 feet or so, every
That's
2
right.
to 3 houses.
That's right.
Because they don't go very far.
No.
But so they have to inundate our communities with these things, and that it will happen unless people say, sorry, we don't want it. And probably even if we do say we don't want it, we would have to have extraordinary organization to stop this, because it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, as Barry Trower points out. And there are a number of experts that I've gone to, and I've posted their information on my website. One's called Dangers of 5G, which has YouTubes featuring Joe Imbriano of California.
Had Joe on 2 nights ago, I think.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Mark Steele of England, Barry Trower of England, and Deborah Tavares also of California. So there's a lot of information packed into their YouTubes, and I've transcribed some of them. And there are things that people can take and do to minimize their risk, their health risk. And one of them is what you advertised there, what's carbon 60, which is supposed to be a good antidote to this thing. Another one is carbonyl iron. Carbon 60 is supposed to help you get the metals out of your system.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're all headed for a millimeter wave 60 gigahertz assault. Right now, the background radiation levels of these weaponized frequencies is trillions of times greater than maybe 50 years ago. So we're doing an experiment on the human species. Barry Trower is very, very qualified expert in microwave weapons.
He's a wonderful mind. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful mind. And he says that, the statistics indicate that in 3 generations, only 1 in 8 people were going to be fertile. Well, it is, this is not acceptable. What this means is eradication, or potential eradication, of the human species.
Well, that's why I brought up the issue of AI declaring itself the lord of the planet, and we're secondary.
Yeah, so you really have to wonder what's behind the ruling elite that has been pushing these agendas secretly for so many decades. In other words, where are they coming from that they envision this amount of destruction and mayhem, this psychopathic plan?
There's nothing kind or humane or caring or good about it, all right? Because it's in the hands of the dark ones. They don't care about us at all.
Well, they seem to take a glee in death and destruction, and torture even.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're dealing with Satanists, and we need to expose these people and get them out of our government and out of the ruling elite positions. A.K. Chesterton said years ago, the proper study of political man is the study of elites. We should be studying them, but rather we've let them study us and profile us and get huge dossiers on us, and rather than have the government transparent and the people's lives opaque, they've turned it around so that our lives are completely transparent to them, and we can't see what they're doing.
No.
So there has been a coup. There have been a series of coups in America, overthrows of our constitutional republic by these groups, these fifth column enemy Trojan horse groups that need to be exposed and need to be identified and need to be taken down. However, I'm not going to. I don't have a plan, but it's got to be done.
It's got to be done or we're gone, and that's the sad truth of it. The other thing is they conduct experiments constantly as this technology continues to evolve exponentially. It's exploding, believe it. And it is the kind of thing that these creeps in their labs and their black ops facilities can target any citizen they want, a couple, and they can turn one against the other. The amount of evil that can be done with this technology that could otherwise be used for good, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be. It's in the hands of the evil ones. The amount that can be done is staggering. Staggering. And I don't mean to tell people that they should give up. Never give up. Never quit. Never surrender. All right? We don't do that. But we are up against really bad stuff. Bad.
Yeah, it's very true. We're certainly in the fight of our lives, and for the species as well. Not only for the civilization,
for
but
the
for the
species. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do believe, in my heart of hearts, that humans are special, that we are the crown of God's creation, and apparently the people at the top do not share that view. They look at most of us as beasts, or creatures to be enslaved.
That's right. That's right.
They're, in my opinion, they're wrong, and fortunately, we outnumber them by, probably close to 1,000,000 to 1. I don't know what the statistics are, but we outnumber them, but they have the money and the power.
They have the absolute abject control through the mainstream media, through the internet, and through invisible EMF. It's in your head right now. You're right now being probed. Your body is being influenced by technology that you people understand some of it at least. I don't understand that much of it, but I know what's going on. We're all being impacted. We are all targeted citizens. And then there are special people who pay the ultimate price.
Yeah, and that template of kind of a twofold program goes right back to the early documents of MK Ultra in 1953. They said, okay, our first goal is to target individuals and find ways to get them to do our bidding, even if it's against their sense of self-interest.
Even if it's against their moral code, their intellectual code, it doesn't matter. They take great delight in turning people inside out. Go ahead.
Yeah, and even against fundamental laws of nature like self-preservation.
Right.
Of course, what he's talking about there is Dallin Dulles is the guy who signed it into being in 1953 for the CIA.
Yeah.
He's talking about the Manchurian Candidate programs of the MK Ultra program and other related to mind control programs. But then the second goal is a psycho-civilized society, a mind-controlled society which would use the technologies and techniques that were perfected on those individuals that they rigorously targeted and used for these draconian experiments, treating them essentially like lab rats, erasing the mind through torture and sleep deprivation and LSD and, induced sleep for 2 months and induced staying up for, a month and electroshock therapy and all these electronic weapons, etc. They tortured these people mercilessly in order to find out what works, actually trying to erase the mind and reprogram it. That's been the goal. And so they want to turn human beings, these sovereign great creatures, amazing creatures with enormous potential, into bio-robot slaves that they can manipulate. And as you rightly point out, I think, Jeff, this has already been accomplished. There's a number of people out there who I would just have to say they're probably already bio-robots. They're already controlled.
Yeah.
It's maybe scary.
Very scary. And I don't scare easily, but this is potentially the end of our species as we knew it. We're seeing it change at warp speed right now, just through the media and the culture, if you can call it culture.
Yeah. Well, and anybody, as I say, of our age, especially, those who paid attention and looked at the sky will notice that, our weather and our skies have changed commensurately as well.
Horrible.
I mean, and in 1996, the Air Force put out a document, Weather as a Force Multiplier, owning the weather by 2025. Well, they pretty much are there.
Oh, they beat that. That was to make us, I think, a little more complacent. 2025 is a long way off. First time I saw a chemtrail was 1996.
Yeah, and I saw them back in 1988. Or at least I found some in some of my photographs. I didn't notice them, but they're in my photographs.
Yeah, I believe it. Sure, you bet. All right, Eric, thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure, and I urge everyone to go to your site and learn. Thank you. We'll talk again.
Yeah, let's hang in there, Jeff, and thanks so much for the opportunity. You have a great one.
My pleasure. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Eric Karlstrom. All right? Okay, we'll be back.